From secret affairs inside the White House, illegal surveillance, connections with criminals, and cover-ups that shocked the nation, here is every president's worst scandal. George Washington was against slavery, but if we dig deeper into his personal life, we see enslaved workers that he owned. The Gradual Abolition Act in Pennsylvania stated that if an enslaved person stayed there for 6 months, they could legally become free. Washington knew this, so he secretly rotated them out of the state before the completion of 6 months. He was basically working around the law. And then on his birthday in 1797, his personal chef escaped. Washington searched for him for years, but he was never found. Some say he lived freely in New York, but nobody really knows how his story ended. John Adams was obsessed with power. When he lost the election, he didn't just quietly walk away. In his final days in office, he appointed a bunch of judges. These were called the Midnight Judges because the papers of their appointment were reportedly signed late into the night. He wanted to make sure his political party still had power even after he was gone. But when Thomas Jefferson became president, he refused to accept some of those appointments. This led to a major court fight that ended up giving the Supreme Court of the United States the power it still uses today. And the man who stepped in after Adams, Thomas Jefferson, was already surrounded by rumors before he even began his presidential tenure. He was accused of having children with an enslaved woman who lived at his home in Monticello. Her name was Sally Hemings. His opponents used this to assassinate his character. Jefferson never publicly denied the accusations. People were making strong speculations. If there was nothing between Sally and Jefferson, then why did she return to him even when she had the chance to be free? Years later, it was proved via DNA tests that Sally's children belonged to Jefferson. Next is Andrew Jackson, who brought a completely different kind of drama into the White House. It was about a woman named Peggy Eaton, who was married to the Secretary of War. Other cabinet members and their wives refused to associate with her because of rumors about her past. Jackson took this personally because his own wife had faced similar attacks. He defended Peggy and demanded respect for her. But the situation got out of hand, and several of his cabinet members resigned. Jackson was forced to rebuild his entire administration. After Jackson came Martin Van Buren, and he had to deal with a huge economic crisis. But even that couldn't limit his extravagance. In 1837, the country was facing a severe financial crisis, the Panic of 1837. Banks became bankrupt, people were unemployed, and money was shrinking in the economy. In this critical situation, Van Buren arranged a lavish White House ball for 1,000 guests. He spent a lot of money on fancy food and wine. People blamed him for wasting the state's money, which was already scarce. He was seen as someone who cared more about luxury than the struggles of everyday Americans. That reputation stuck and really hurt his chances in the next election. But before we move on to the next one, take a second to subscribe, because these stories only get darker from here. After Harrison's sudden death, John Tyler unexpectedly became president. But as soon as he took the office, signs of betrayal emerged. His own party, the Whigs, refused to accept him as their leader. Things got tense when Tyler vetoed a bill for a national bank. This led to the resignation of most of his cabinet. The Whigs were so frustrated that they actually expelled him from the party while he was still in office. Tyler tried to push back, but the opposition was way stronger, while Tyler was handling the presidency almost entirely on his own. Let's skip to James Buchanan. He came into office during a time when tensions over slavery were at their peak. In 1857, the Supreme Court of the United States made the infamous Dred Scott decision, ruling that Black Americans could never be citizens, and that Congress couldn't ban slavery in the territories. Buchanan had secretly pressured the Supreme Court to rule that way before the decision came out. When people found out, nationwide protests were held, and Buchanan lost the confidence of the people. That move made North-South tensions even worse and pushed the country closer to civil war. After Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln took office right as the Civil War was starting. He had to make some really tough calls, and one of the most controversial was suspending habeas corpus. Basically, the military could arrest people suspected of disloyalty without a trial. Thousands of people, including newspaper editors and politicians, were jailed this way. The Supreme Court of the United States said it was unconstitutional, but Lincoln ignored it. His only answer was that it was necessary for national security. Right after Lincoln, Andrew Johnson took over. He ran into immediate trouble with Congress over Reconstruction. Johnson tried to fire his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, without Senate approval, and Congress wasn't having it. They impeached him in 1868, making him the first U.S. president ever to face impeachment. The Senate came just one vote short of removing him, so he stayed in office, but his power was weakened, and he didn't get re-elected. It was a rough presidency from start to finish. After Johnson, Rutherford B. Hayes stepped in to what became known as one of the most controversial elections in American history. In 1876, he actually lost the popular vote, but a secret deal with Southern Democrats gave him the presidency. In return, Hayes agreed to pull federal troops out of the South, which effectively ended Reconstruction. This allowed discriminatory laws to take hold, rolling back a lot of progress for Black Americans. Because of how he got into office, many people called him his Fraudulency Hayes. His presidency started under a cloud of suspicion and set a tense tone for the country. Bill Clinton is unforgettable for something that rocked the nation. In the late 1990s, it came out that he had a sexual relationship with a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky, while he was in office. Clinton famously denied it on TV before the truth came out, and that led to his impeachment by the House for perjury and obstruction of justice, the second president ever impeached. The whole thing made him look dishonest and reckless in the eyes of a lot of people. George W. Bush faced huge backlash for his leadership after disasters. The biggest one was Hurricane Katrina in 2005, when a massive storm hit New Orleans and thousands of Americans were left without help for days. Bush was criticized for his apparently slow, uncaring response, and even being photographed flying over the disaster while people suffered below. And then there were the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Even after losing millions of lives and wasting trillions of dollars, many questioned whether they should have ever been started. During Trump's time in office, and even after, a lot of documents about Jeffrey Epstein came out. Trump's name showed up thousands of times in those records. People noticed flight logs, photos, and emails that showed Trump and Epstein hanging out, going on private jet trips and attending events together. That was contrary to what Trump had been saying for years, that he barely knew Epstein and had cut ties long ago. There were also claims that his Justice Department delayed or redacted parts of the Epstein files. Critics said this was done to protect powerful people, maybe even Trump himself. Even though Trump isn't charged with any crime, The Epstein files continue to make him look shady. The ongoing revelations and denials left a lot of people questioning how honest he really is.